might add, the Second Amendment from the day it was passed limited the type of people who could own a gun, what type of weapon.
Patently and demonstrably untrue. Patently untrue.
You could own. You couldn't buy a cannon. Those who say the blood of patriots, and all this stuff about how we're going to have to.
There again, also patently untrue, because you could own cannons. There were many privately owned cannons during the days before the American War for Independence. People were making their own. See, they weren't made in factories that were owned by military suppliers or private manufacturing companies who worked as military suppliers, like we see today. They were made by craftsmen. Cannons were made by craftsmen, and in oftentimes, especially for the Continental Army and in the Continental Navy, a lot of times it was private citizens who provided things like cannons and muskets to the military forces. In fact, oftentimes people took their own firearms with them to join the Continental Army. Fact of the matter.
Against the government. Well, the tree of liberty is not water in the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there are never been
a reference that I'm paraphrasing, that from time to time the tree of liberty's roots must be refreshed by both the blood of patriots and tyrants. So let's just go back just a little bit here.
If you wanted to think you need that, you could own a gun. What type of weapon you could own? You couldn't buy a cannon. Those who say the blood of patriots, and all this stuff about how we're going to have to move against the government. Well, the tree of liberty is not water in the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there are never been, if you wanted to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons.
That's your president, America, advocating, your co-president, advocating for nuclear war between the United States government and citizens.
The point is that there's always been the ability to rationally limit the type of weapon that can be owned and who can own it.
No. No. Nope. It'd be so easy right now for me to go off on a tear. Once again, I have to emphasize, I do not call for the initiation of the use of force by private citizens in almost any situation. But we do have to understand that our founding fathers secured for us via the Constitution and the natural rights of man as granted to us by the God of nature. Our founding fathers secured for us the right to a defense against a tyrannical government. The Second Amendment is not about hunting. The Second Amendment is not about pleasure shooting. The Second Amendment is not about the right to self-defense from criminals. Now, those things fall underneath it. So the Second Amendment does allow us to have firearms that we can then use for hunting, that we can then use to go out for pleasure shooting at a gun range for target practice, or even blowing up tannerite targets, or for self-defense against the criminal element. But the Second Amendment is solely and exclusively as a primary product about the redress of grievances against a tyrannical government, just like the First Amendment. And in fact, When you strip away the Second Amendment, the First Amendment will fall. Now, right now, our governmental authorities are trying their level best to strip away the First, because if they can do that, then they can silence you on your dissent about their views on firearms control and red flag laws and things like that. But they're going to figure it out sooner or later that the only way that they can silence your dissent by speaking is to strip away your right to keep and bear arms for the purposes of having a militia that can resist tyranny. And once they are able to do that, once they can convince the sheeple of the United States, and remember, it was when Barack Hussein Obama was president, one of the elections there, 51% of the people who voted were on some form of government handout. It will not take long for those people to rise up and say, look, if you want to take guns away, just keep giving us some money. Keep giving us money, and we'll be okay with you taking away our firearms. Once they can find a loophole or a way to convince the sheeple of the United States that no one should be able to have a gun for any reason because it's the government's job to protect us from threats, both foreign and domestic, then your First Amendment abilities will be gone. Gone. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what will happen. You have to be aware of this, America. You have to be aware. Once again, not an advocate for the initiation of force against anybody, but I am a reasonable advocate for the fact that the Second Amendment is about our ability to defy tyrants. And that means if our government becomes tyrannical and they will no longer listen to reason and begin to take action against American patriots, against those who are law-abiding American citizens, who are constitutionally minded, who are volunteerists, who are individualists, and when they begin to take action against us for our voicing of vocal dissent and our right for the redress of grievances, then I am saying that when they come and they say you will either submit and you come along, and you will get on the cattle car, or you will get in this vehicle, this transport vehicle, and you will be taken away to whatever re-education camp or quarantine camp or isolation camp, and they open fire on you for refusing to go, then you have a right to shoot back. And this is not talking about lawfully executed warrants and lawfully executed arrests and things like that. Nobody has a right to shoot at cops. Nobody has a right to shoot cops when they're issuing a warrant, or when they're detaining you, or when they're putting you under arrest for the commission of a crime. No one has a right for that. But when the powers that be decide they're going to start rounding up dissenters at the point of guns, and don't tell me it cannot happen in our modern world, because it is happening all over the world right now. And not in third world countries, in first world countries. Pastors in Canada are being hauled away for keeping their churches open by men with guns. So don't tell me it can't happen, because Canada is just a few years ahead of the United States when it comes to socio-political positions. When the threat of force comes in and they say, if you do not comply, you will be shot. When the shooting starts, the American people had better have the ability to defend themselves from that kind of tyranny. And that's what the Second Amendment is about. And no, it doesn't mean you have to have an F-15 or a nuclear weapon. That is a straw man. That is a red herring. It's a logical fallacy that is being perpetrated on us by our government. By our government, I should say our governing servants, our public servants, appointed and elected. That's a myth. It's a straw man. Oh, well, you must think you want a nuclear weapon. No, like, first of all, it's not going to come to that. And two, if it comes down to that kind of war, we'll get the F-15s. And we'll find people who can fly them. But that's not the point. It should never have to come to that. And having the president of the United States, the co-president of the United States, stand there in front of the American public during a press conference say the kind of garbage that he just said and basically make it very clear that you can't resist us because you don't have our weaponry, you can't resist us because you don't have our armament, should tell you exactly the direction they're trying to take this country. You don't think that's what's happening? They straight out just telegraphed to us exactly what's on their minds. We're going to win because we got it all. An elected servant or an appointed servant who seeks to belittle the position and talk about how your freedom to have a certain kind of weapon should be limited, while bragging about the firepower that they have, is communicating to you, telegraphing to you that they are a tyrant and that they are coming for you. That's what they're saying. And that's what they want. You need to be careful in your speech, America. But you need to speak while you still have that right, while you still have that liberty. And you need to find elected and appointed public servants who will stand with you on that. And you need to support them and encourage them while you can. Because the day is coming when they're going to take it all away.
Stand by for further instructions, MinnesotaBlackRobeRegiment.
Now more than ever, do not worry about whether or not you're safe. Fight for your liberties and freedoms. And sic semper tyrannis.
MinnesotaBlackRobeRegiment, it will be on my mark.